Welcome to Grandma Diary. Please subscribe and let's dive in. I never thought I'd spend my 67th birthday sleeping in my car, but there I was, parked under a flickering streetlight 3 blocks from the house I'd helped buy. My surgical scar still burning beneath the thin hospital gown I hadn't even had time to change out of. The overhead light cast strange shadows across the dashboard, and every time a car passed by I held my breath, afraid someone would see me like this. Broken, abandoned, utterly alone. My hands trembled as I clutched the bottle of pain medication the hospital had given me just 12 hours earlier. The label was already smudged from my tears. "Take with food," it said. I looked at the empty passenger seat where a bag of stale crackers sat, my only meal in the past day. This wasn't how recovery was supposed to go. This wasn't how family was supposed to work. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning because you need to understand how I got here. You need to understand everything that led to this moment. The moment when I realized that sometimes the people you love most are capable of the deepest cruelty. It was a Tuesday morning in March when Dr. Patterson called me into her office with that look on her face. The one doctors practice in medical school, the one that says, "I'm about to change your life forever." I'd been her patient for 15 years, and I'd never seen her look quite so serious. "Margaret, I need you to sit down," she said gently, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I sat, my purse clutched in my lap like a shield. Through the window behind her, I could see the parking lot where I'd parked my aging Honda Civic. I remember thinking how normal everything looked out there. People coming and going, living their ordinary lives, completely unaware that inside this office, my world was about to tilt on its axis. "The biopsy results came back," Dr. Patterson continued, folding her hands on her desk. "I'm afraid it's not good news. You have adenocarcinoma of the colon. Stage 3. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I heard them, understood them on some intellectual level, but they didn't quite penetrate. Cancer. The word everyone fears. The diagnosis that turns your life into a before and after. How bad is stage 3? I finally managed to ask, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. Dr. Patterson pulled out a chart, pointing to different areas as she explained. Stage 3 means the cancer has spread to nearby lymph nodes, but we haven't found evidence of distant metastasis yet. That's the good news. The challenging news is that you'll need aggressive treatment. Surgery first, to remove the affected section of your colon and the surrounding lymph nodes, followed by chemotherapy. "Surgery," I repeated numbly. "Yes. And Margaret, I won't lie to you. This is a significant operation. There are risks involved. Your age is a factor, though you're in relatively good health otherwise. But we need to act quickly. Every week we wait, the cancer has more opportunity to spread." I sat there trying to process everything. I was 67 years old. I'd survived widowhood, financial hardship, loneliness, and more heartbreak than I cared to remember. But cancer. This was new territory, and it terrified me in a way nothing else ever had. What are my odds? I asked because I needed to know. I'd never been one to hide from hard truths. Dr. Patterson met my eyes directly. With surgery and chemotherapy, the 5-year survival rate for stage 3 colon cancer is approximately 65%. But statistics don't tell the whole story. You're strong, Margaret. I've seen you weather health issues before. If anyone can beat this, you can. 65%. Which meant a 35% chance I wouldn't see my 70s. Wouldn't see my grandchildren graduate high school. Wouldn't see whatever came next in this life I'd fought so hard to build. When? Yes. When would the surgery be? I'd like to schedule it within the next 2 weeks. I'll refer you to Dr. Chan at Memorial Hospital. He's one of the best oncological surgeons in the state. In the meantime, we'll run some additional scans to map exactly what we're dealing with. I left her office in a daze, clutching the folder of information she'd given me. The parking lot still looked the same. Normal, ordinary, mundane. But I wasn't the same person who'd walked in an hour ago. I was now officially a cancer patient, a statistic, someone fighting for their life. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could bring myself to turn the key in the ignition. I needed to call David. My son, my only child, the one person in the world who mattered most to me. But I was terrified to speak the words out loud to make this real. Finally, I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. "Hey, Mom." His voice was bright, cheerful. I could hear office noise in the background. Keyboards clicking, muted conversations. "What's up?" "I'm just heading into a meeting, but I've got a few minutes." "David, My voice cracked. "I need to tell you something." The cheerfulness vanished instantly. "Mom. What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I just came from Dr. Patterson's office." "David, I have cancer." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, "What? What kind? What stage?" "What did she say?" I told him everything, my voice barely holding steady. I told him about the stage 3 diagnosis, the surgery, the statistics. And as I talked, I could hear him falling apart on the other end of the line. "I'm coming over," he said immediately. "I'm leaving work right now. Don't go home yet. Meet me at that coffee shop near the hospital. The one we used to go to when you'd pick me up from baseball practice, remember?" I remembered. "David, you don't have to." "Mom. I'm coming. Stay there." He hung up, and I drove to the coffee shop on autopilot, my mind a whirl of fear and uncertainty. By the time I arrived, David's car was already in the parking lot. He must have broken every speed limit to get there so fast. He met me at my car door, pulling me into a fierce hug the moment I stepped out. My tall, successful son, 39 years old with a mortgage and 2 kids and a demanding job, holding his mother in a parking lot while she cried into his shoulder. "We're going to beat this," he whispered into my hair. "You hear me? We're going to fight this thing together. You're not alone, Mom. You'll never be alone." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. 3 years earlier, I'd sold the house David grew up in. It was too big for just me, too full of memories of his father, too expensive to maintain on my modest retirement income. I'd moved into a small apartment across town, determined to be independent, to not burden my son with an aging mother's needs. But 6 months ago everything had changed. I'd fallen in the apartment, a stupid accident, catching my foot on the edge of a rug, and broken my wrist badly. David had insisted I come stay with them while I recovered. "Just temporarily," he'd said. "Until you're back on your feet." Jessica, my daughter-in-law, had smiled and nodded. "Of course. We have plenty of room." Temporarily had stretched from weeks into months. My wrist healed, but somehow I never quite moved back out. David kept saying there was no rush. The kids, Emma, 12, and Tyler, 9, loved having grandma around. I helped with homework, cooked dinners, gave Jessica breaks from the constant demands of parenting. Or at least I thought I was helping. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way Jessica's smile grew tighter whenever David mentioned me staying. The subtle comments about space and privacy. The way she'd sometimes close the door to their bedroom with just a bit more force than necessary. But I'd been so grateful for the company, so relieved not to be alone in that apartment where I'd sit for hours with no one to talk to, that I'd ignored the warning signs. I told myself I was imagining things. That Jessica was just stressed with work and the kids. That everything was fine. The night after my diagnosis, David called a family meeting. We sat in their living room, the same living room I'd helped furnish, contributing money from the sale of my old house to help with the down payment on this beautiful home. Emma and Tyler were at after-school activities, so it was just the 3 of us. "Jessica," David began, reaching for her hand. "Mom's going to need a lot of support over the next few months. The surgery, the recovery, the chemo. I know having her stay here has been an adjustment, but—" "Of course she'll stay," Jessica interrupted, but I noticed she didn't squeeze his hand back. "We're family. That's what family does." "It might be intense," David continued. "The recovery from this surgery is no joke. She'll need help with basic things for a while. Getting dressed, bathing, taking medications on schedule." I saw something flicker across Jessica's face. Was it panic? Resentment? It was gone too quickly for me to be sure. David, maybe I should look into a rehabilitation facility, I suggested quietly. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden, Mom. You're never a burden. David's voice was firm. You've sacrificed everything for me my whole life. Let me take care of you now. Jessica's smile looked painted on. Of course. Whatever Margaret needs. But her eyes told a different story. The 2 weeks before my surgery passed in a blur of medical appointments, pre-operative tests, and increasingly detailed instructions. Dr. Chen, the surgeon, was exactly as Dr. Patterson had described. Competent, experienced, but with a bluntness that left no room for false hope. This is major abdominal surgery, he explained, pointing to anatomical diagrams that made my stomach turn. We'll be removing approximately 12 inches of your colon and anywhere from 12 to 20 lymph nodes, depending on what we find during the operation. You'll have a temporary ileostomy for 6 to 8 weeks while your colon heals. A what? Yes. A bag, he said simply. Your intestine will be rerouted through an opening in your abdomen, and waste will collect in an external bag. Sounds worse than it is. Many patients adjust quickly. After your colon heals, we'll do a second surgery to reverse it. Felt sick. Not only would I have cancer, but I'd also have a bag attached to my body, a constant reminder of my illness, my vulnerability, my failing body. Dr. Chen continued, seemingly unbothered by my obvious distress. The surgery will take 4 to 6 hours. You'll be in the hospital for 5 to 7 days if there are no complications. Then you'll need approximately 6 weeks of recovery at home before we can start chemotherapy. What are the risks? I asked because I needed to know everything. He didn't sugarcoat it. Infection, bleeding, blood clots, reactions to anesthesia, damage to surrounding organs. In rare cases, the surgical site can leak, which is very serious. And of course, there's always a risk with any major surgery, especially in patients over 65. I'd put your overall mortality risk during and immediately after surgery at about 3 to 5%. 3 to 5% chance I wouldn't wake up. Or that I'd wake up and something would go catastrophically wrong. David was with me for that appointment. His face went pale when Dr. Chen mentioned mortality risk. But she'll be okay, right? David asked, and I heard the little boy in his voice, the child who'd once asked me if I'd ever die, if I'd ever leave him. I certainly plan to do everything in my power to ensure a successful outcome, Dr. Chen replied. Margaret is in decent health otherwise. Her heart is strong, her lungs are clear. She has good odds, but I believe in informed consent. She needs to understand what she's facing. We scheduled the surgery for Thursday, March 24th. 2 weeks away. 14 days to get my affairs in order, to prepare myself mentally and physically, to hope and pray that I'd be one of the lucky ones. David took time off work to help me prepare. He drove me to appointments, helped me fill out advance directives and power of attorney documents, held my hand when I met with the oncologist to discuss the chemotherapy regimen that would follow surgery. Jessica came to one appointment, the one where the ostomy nurse explained how to care for the ileostomy bag. I watched her face as the nurse demonstrated on a model, showing how the bag would attach, how it would need to be emptied and changed. Jessica's face went slightly green. You'll be able to do that yourself though, right? Once you're recovered. Eventually, the nurse said cheerfully. But for the first few weeks, she'll need help. The surgical site will be tender, and reaching around can be difficult. Right, Jessica said faintly. Of course. That night, I heard them arguing in their bedroom. Their voices were muffled, but I caught fragments. Can't expect me to. My mother, Jessica. She has cancer. Never agreed to this level of care. What marriage is about in sickness and not married to your mother. I pulled my pillow over my head and tried not to cry. I was already a burden, and I hadn't even had the surgery yet. The next morning, Jessica was all smiles again. Margaret, I was thinking, maybe we should set up the guest room on the main floor for you? The stairs might be difficult after surgery. It was a thoughtful suggestion, and I tried to accept it at face value. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was already trying to contain me, to keep me separate from the main household. David was thrilled with the idea. "That's perfect. The bathroom is right there, and you won't have to worry about stairs. We can move the TV down, set up everything you need." They spent that weekend transforming the first-floor guest room into a recovery room for me. David brought down my favorite lamp, my books, framed photos of him and the grandkids. Jessica contributed new sheets and towels, a small refrigerator for water and snacks. On the surface, it was loving and thoughtful. But every time I caught Jessica looking at the room, I saw something else in her eyes. Something that looked almost like resentment. 3 days before the surgery, David had to break the news. His company was sending him to Seattle for an emergency meeting. A merger was falling apart, and as the senior project manager, he was essential to salvaging it. "I tried to get out of it, Mom." I explained the situation, but, "It's okay," I told him, even though my heart was sinking. "I understand. Work is important. I'll be back before you're even out of recovery," he promised. "The meeting is Wednesday. Your surgery is Thursday morning. I'll fly back Thursday night, and I'll be at the hospital Friday morning. You won't even know I was gone." "What if?" I couldn't finish the sentence. "What if something goes wrong? What if I die while you're in Seattle?" David pulled me into a hug. "Nothing is going to go wrong. Dr. Chen is the best. And Jessica will be there. She'll call me the second you're out of surgery. I'll have my phone on me every second. Jessica will take good care of you," he said, looking over at his wife. Jessica nodded, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Of course I will." I tried to believe them both. The night before my surgery, the house felt different. Heavy. Oppressive. I couldn't sleep, couldn't get comfortable, couldn't stop my mind from racing through all the worst-case scenarios. At midnight, I gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen for water. I found Jessica there, sitting in the dark, staring at her laptop screen. "Oh," I said, startled. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "You didn't," she said, closing the laptop quickly. "I was just finishing some work. Can't sleep. Too nervous," I admitted. We stood there in awkward silence for a moment. Then, to my surprise, Jessica spoke. "Margaret, I want you to know." She paused, seeming to struggle with her words. "I know this has been hard. Having me live here, I mean. David doesn't see it, but I know it's been an adjustment for you too." "No, Jessica, you've been. Please let me finish." She held up a hand. "I'm not good at this. Caregiving. At the medical stuff. It makes me uncomfortable and anxious and I shut down. That's my failing, not yours. But I want you to know I'll try. While David is gone, I'll try my best." It was the most honest she'd ever been with me. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe everything would be okay. Maybe I'd been worrying for nothing. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means a lot." She nodded and stood up, closing her laptop. "You should try to get some rest. Big day tomorrow." "Jessica," I called as she reached the doorway. "I really am grateful. For everything. For letting me stay here, for the room you set up, for being patient with an old woman who's overstayed her welcome." Something flickered across her face. Guilt. Pain. "You haven't overstayed anything. Get some sleep, Margaret." She disappeared upstairs, and I was alone in the dark kitchen, holding my water glass, trying to convince myself that everything would be fine. Emma came down a few minutes later, surprising me. She was in her pajamas, her hair messy from sleep. "Grandma, are you scared?" I opened my arms, and she folded herself into my embrace the way she used to when she was little. At 12, she was already getting too old for grandma hugs, but tonight she needed one as much as I did. "A little scared," I admitted. "But mostly ready. Ready to fight this thing and get better. What if?" Her voice was small. "What if something bad happens?" "Nothing bad is going to happen. I'm too stubborn. You know that." She laughed, but it sounded watery. "Promise you'll come home." "I promise, sweetheart. I promise." I held her for a long time, memorizing the smell of her shampoo, the weight of her in my arms, The way she still felt like my little girl even though she was growing up so fast. If something did go wrong tomorrow, I wanted this moment burned into my memory. Finally, she pulled back and wiped her eyes. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, Emma. More than you'll ever know. She went back upstairs and I returned to my room, my recovery room. I lay in the bed David had made up so carefully, surrounded by photos of the people I loved, and I prayed. I prayed for strength, for healing, for one more chance to watch my grandchildren grow up. I must have eventually fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, David was shaking me gently awake. Mom, it's time. The hospital at 5:30 a.m. was a strange, liminal place. The sun wasn't up yet, and the fluorescent lights gave everything a harsh, unforgiving quality. David held my hand as we checked in, while Jessica trailed behind us, clutching a large coffee cup like a lifeline. The pre-op process was a blur of paperwork, vital signs, and changing into a hospital gown that tied in the back and left me feeling exposed and vulnerable. A nurse shaved part of my abdomen, explaining matter-of-factly that hair interfered with surgical sites. Another nurse started in 4, missing the vein twice before finally getting it right. David sat in the chair next to my gurney, still holding my hand. His eyes were red. I don't think he'd slept at all. You're going to miss your flight, I reminded him gently. I don't care about the flight. David, you have to go. The company needs you and I'm going to be unconscious anyway. There's nothing you can do here except worry. Jessica appeared in the doorway. He's right, David. You should go. We'll stay. I'll call you the second she's out of surgery. David looked torn, his gaze moving between his wife and his mother. Finally, he leaned down and kissed my forehead. I love you, Mom. You're the strongest person I know. You're going to get through this. I love you too, baby. He left, and I tried not to feel abandoned. He'd be back. Less than 24 hours. Could do this. Jessica settled into the chair David had vacated, but she didn't take my hand. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Dr. Chen appeared, already in surgical scrubs. Ready, Margaret. As ready as I'll ever be. We're going to take good care of you. I'll see you in a few hours. The anesthesiologist introduced himself, explaining that he'd give me something to relax me before we went into the operating room. He injected something into my fore, and within seconds, a pleasant warmth spread through my body. The harsh lights seemed softer. The fear seemed more distant. Jessica, I said, my tongue feeling thick. She looked up from her phone. Yes, thank you for being here. She nodded but didn't smile. Of course. Those were the last words I heard before they wheeled me away. I wouldn't learn what happened during my surgery until much later, but Jessica told me eventually, during one of our many painful conversations after everything fell apart. She said she'd sat in that waiting room for 6 hours, watching other families come and go, watching people receive good news and bad news, watching the clock tick forward with agonizing slowness. She'd called David 3 times. Once when they took me into surgery. Once 3 hours in, when a nurse came out to say everything was going well. And once when Dr. Chen finally emerged, looking tired but satisfied, to say I'd made it through. The surgery went well, he'd told Jessica. We removed the affected section of colon and 18 lymph nodes. Pathology will tell us more, but visually we got clean margins. She's in recovery now. You can see her in about an hour, once she's stable. Jessica had called David immediately. She's out. She's okay. Doctor says it went well. David had cried with relief, Jessica told me later. She could hear it in his voice, the way it cracked and broke. Thank God. Thank God. I'll catch the next flight out. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'll be there soon. Jessica had hung up and sat back down to wait. That's when it hit her, she said. The full reality of what came next. Weeks of recovery. Of helping me bathe. Of changing that ileostomy bag. Of managing medications and wound care and all the messy, uncomfortable realities of a body healing from trauma. She'd felt panic rising in her chest, she admitted. She'd felt trapped. But she'd pushed it down. She'd told herself she could do this. She had to do this. When they finally let her in to see me, I was barely conscious, drifting in and out of awareness. The recovery room was full of beeping machines and the groans of other post-surgical patients. I looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, she said. Breakable. Margaret, she'd whispered. Can you hear me? I'd opened my eyes briefly, not really seeing her. David. He'll be here soon. The surgery went well. You did great. I drifted back under, and Jessica had sat there, watching me breathe, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. I don't remember much from the first day after surgery. Everything exists in fragments, flashes of consciousness punctuated by long stretches of nothing. God, the pain. Even through the medication, it was there, a deep, burning ache across my entire abdomen. Every breath hurt. Every tiny movement sent lightning through my body. Nurses coming and going, checking vitals, adjusting medication, speaking in cheerful tones that seemed obscene given how much I was hurting. On a scale of 1 to 10, how's your pain? 15, I wanted to say, but my mouth wouldn't form the words. At some point, a nurse explained about the ileostomy bag, showed me where it was, how it worked. I didn't want to look. Didn't want to acknowledge this new reality of my body. Jessica was there sometimes, sitting in the corner on her phone. Other times the chair was empty. Time had no meaning. Day and night blurred together. On the second day I was more lucid. The pain was still intense, but manageable. I could think again, could remember who I was, why I was here. Where's David? I asked Jessica when she appeared with a cup of coffee. Still in Seattle. The meeting is taking longer than expected. He'll be here tomorrow for sure. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. How do you feel? Jessica asked dutifully. Like I got hit by a truck. The nurse said you're doing well. All things considered. We sat in awkward silence. Jessica scrolled through her phone. I watched the 4 drip, counting the drops, anything to distract from the pain and discomfort. Jessica, I said after a while. I'm sorry about all this. I know it's not what you signed up for. She looked up, and for a moment, I saw something raw in her expression. It's fine, Margaret. Don't worry about it. But I could tell it wasn't fine. I could see the stress in the tight line of her shoulders, the shadows under her eyes, the way she kept checking her watch as if counting down the minutes until she could leave. Dr. Chen visited that afternoon, checking my incision, asking about pain levels, explaining what came next. You're healing well, he said. If things continue like this, you'll be discharged in 3 days. Then 6 weeks of home recovery before we reassess for chemotherapy. 3 days. Then home. Then 6 weeks of depending on Jessica for everything. I saw her face when he said 6 weeks. Saw the way she went pale, the way her jaw clenched. 6 weeks of what exactly? She asked. She'll need significant assistance, Dr. Chen explained. Help with bathing, dressing, managing the ostomy, taking medications. She won't be able to drive for at least 4 weeks. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity. She'll need to rest, eat well, let her body heal. Right, Jessica said faintly. Of course. After Dr. Chen left, Jessica excused herself to make phone calls. She was gone for over an hour. When she came back, her eyes were red. Everything okay? Yes. Fine. Just work stuff. But I knew better. I knew I was the problem. I just didn't know yet how much of a problem Jessica really thought I was. On the 5th day they discharged me. Jessica arrived mid-morning to collect me, pulling her SUV up to the hospital entrance while a nurse wheeled me out in a wheelchair. I was wearing the same clothes I'd arrived in, sweatpants and a loose shirt, but they felt foreign on my body now. My abdomen was swollen, tender, and the ostomy bag created a strange bulge under my shirt. Felt grotesque. Damage. Other. The nurse helped me into the passenger seat with excruciating slowness. Every movement hurt. By the time I was settled, I was panting, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes. You'll want to keep a pillow between you and the seatbelt, the nurse advised, handing Jessica a hospital-issued pillow. For comfort and to protect the surgical site. Jessica took the pillow without comment, tossing it onto my lap. The ride home was agony. Every bump, every turn, every sudden break sent pain radiating through my torso. I pressed the pillow against myself and bit my lip to keep from crying out. Jessica drove in silence, her hands tight on the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the road. She didn't ask how I was feeling. Didn't make small talk. Just drove. When we pulled into the driveway, I felt a wave of relief. My room. My bed. I could rest, heal, get through this. Jessica parked and turned off the engine. She sat there for a moment, not moving, not speaking. "Jessica," I said tentatively. "Do you need help with? We need to talk." My heart sank. Those 4 words in that tone never preceded anything good. "Can it wait?" "Yes. I'm in a lot of pain and I really just need to." "No. It can't wait." She turned to face me, and I was shocked by the coldness in her eyes. This wasn't the woman who'd held my hand the night before surgery. This wasn't the daughter-in-law who'd promised to help. This was someone else entirely. "Margaret," she began, and her voice was carefully controlled. "I need you to understand something. I've been thinking about this a lot over the past few days. About our situation. About what's best for my family." "Your family," I repeated, confused. "David and I are." "You're David's mother," she cut me off. "But you're not my family." "Not really. And I've tried, Margaret. I've really tried to make this work. But I can't do this. I can't be your caretaker." I stared at her, not comprehending. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that this arrangement, you living with us, it's not working. It hasn't been working for a while. And now, with your recovery, with everything you're going to need, it's too much. It's too much for me, too much for the kids, too much for our household." "Jessica, I just had surgery 6 days ago." "I know. And I'm sorry about the timing. But I've made a decision. You need to find somewhere else to recover." The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Somewhere else. "Jessica, I can barely walk. I need help with basic tasks." The doctor said. "There are facilities for this. Rehabilitation centers. Nursing homes. I've researched them. I can give you a list." "You want to put me in a nursing home?" My voice came out as a whisper. "I want you to get the professional care you need," she said, and she almost sounded like she believed it. "I'm not a nurse, Margaret. I'm not qualified to do this." "But David isn't here. And when he gets back, he'll understand. He'll see that this is what's best for everyone." "No," I said, and my voice was shaking. "No, he won't. Jessica, please. Just give me a few weeks. I won't be a burden, I'll stay in my room. You've been here for 6 months, Margaret. Living in our home, eating our food, using our utilities. I never complained because David wanted you here. But this is different. This is asking me to be responsible for your medical care, your physical care, everything. And I can't. I won't." I felt tears streaming down my face. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have money for a facility. My savings are gone. I gave most of it to help with your down payment. That was your choice. I thought we were family. We're not." Her voice was flat, final. "I'm sorry if you misunderstood. But we're not." She got out of the car and came around to my side, opening the door. "I've packed your things. They're on the curb. I think it's best if you leave now." "Now. Right now." "Jessica, I need my medications. I need." "Everything's in the bags. Medications, clothes, photos. Everything." I looked toward the house and saw them. 2 large black trash bags sitting at the end of the driveway like garbage waiting for pickup. My entire life stuffed into trash bags. "You can't do this," I said, but even as I spoke, I knew she could. She was doing it. "I can, and I am. I'm sorry, Margaret. But this is my home, and I'm making an executive decision for my family's well-being." She helped me out of the car, not gently but efficiently, and I stood there, swaying, one hand pressed against my abdomen, trying to process what was happening. "What about Emma and Tyler?" I asked desperately. Can I at least say goodbye? They're at school. I told them you decided to recover somewhere else, that it would be easier for everyone. You lied to them. I simplified the situation. She went to the bags, dragged them over to where I stood. Your car is in the garage. The keys are in the side pocket of that bag. I'm going inside now. Don't try to follow me. Don't try to contact the kids. When David gets home, I'll explain everything. He'll never forgive you for this, I said. For the first time she looked uncertain. But then her jaw set. That's between me and my husband. Goodbye, Margaret. I hope you feel better. She walked into the house and closed the door. I heard the lock click. And I was alone. I stood in that driveway for I don't know how long, clutching my abdomen, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The afternoon sun beat down on me. Sweat trickled down my back. My surgical sight throbbed with every heartbeat. Finally, survival instinct kicked in. I couldn't just stand there. I had to move, had to think, had to do something. I dragged the first trash bag toward the garage, and pain exploded across my abdomen. I gasped, nearly falling to my knees. Too heavy. I couldn't lift it. Could barely pull it. I left it there and stumbled to the garage instead, finding my Honda where I'd left it 5 days ago. A lifetime ago. I fished the keys from the bag pocket Jessica had mentioned, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice. Took me 20 minutes to move both bags to my car. 20 minutes of excruciating pain, of stopping every few feet to catch my breath, of crying so hard I could barely see. A neighbor walked by with a dog. She looked at me, looked at the trash bags, looked away quickly and hurried past. I wanted to scream at her for help. But pride, stupid, useless pride, kept my mouth shut. Finally, everything was in the car. I collapsed into the driver's seat, panting, dizzy, wondering if I'd just ripped my surgical site open with the exertion. My hospital gown, the one I'd never changed out of, was soaked with sweat under my clothes. I sat there, engine running, with no idea where to go. I called my sister and no answer. I remembered then. She'd told me last month she was going to Florida to visit her daughter. For how long? A week? A month? I couldn't remember. I called my friend Patricia. She answered on the third ring. Margaret, how did the surgery go? I've been thinking about you. Patricia, my voice broke. I need help. I need somewhere to stay. Just for a few days, just until. Oh honey, I'm in Florida. Remember? I told you last month I was coming down to visit and we're actually having lunch together tomorrow. Course. And Patricia had planned this trip together. I'd known about it. Had I sent my sister a card for her birthday before she left? I couldn't remember. Everything before the surgery felt foggy and distant. Is everything okay? Patricia asked, concern filling her voice. I'm fine, I lied. I got confused. The pain medication. Never mind. Are you sure? Margaret, you don't sound fine. Hung up. Couldn't explain. Couldn't speak the words that would make this real. I tried to think of other options. Other friends. But the truth was, I didn't have many. When you're a widow at 42, when you spend 20 years focused solely on raising your son, working 2 jobs, surviving, you don't maintain a large social circle. The friends I'd had in my 30s had drifted away. The friends from work had retired and moved to other states. I had David. I had always had David. And now I had no one. I drove. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay in that driveway, looking at the house that had been my home, the door that was now locked against me. I ended up at a grocery store parking lot, pulling into a spot far from the entrance. I turned off the engine and sat there, trying to breathe through the pain, trying to think. My phone buzzed. David. Mom. Finally. I've been trying to reach you for an hour. How are you feeling? How was the ride home? I opened my mouth to tell him, to explain what Jessica had done. But what came out was, I'm fine, sweetheart. Tired. The ride was fine. Is Jessica taking good care of you? Yes, I lied. Good. But, listen Mom, I have bad news. The merger situation is worse than we thought. I'm gonna have to stay another day, maybe two. But I'll be home soon, I promise. Can you manage until then? Another day. Maybe two. Could I manage? Of course, I said. Take the time you need. I love you, Mom. Rest up. I'll see you in a couple days. I love you too, baby. I hung up and stared at my phone. Why hadn't I told him? Why hadn't I screamed the truth? That his wife had thrown me out, that I was sitting in a parking lot with nowhere to go, that I was scared and in pain and alone. Because I didn't want him to have to choose. Because I was afraid of what that choice might be. Because some part of me still believed this was my fault, that I'd overstayed my welcome, that I'd been a burden just like Jessica said. The afternoon faded into evening. I took my pain medication with warm bottled water I'd bought weeks ago, still sitting in my cup holder. I reclined the seat as far as it would go, but every position hurt. I dozed fitfully, waking every time a car door slammed or someone walked past. Each time fear spiked through me. Was it security? Would they tell me to leave? Where would I go then? Around midnight, a police car cruised slowly through the parking lot. I held my breath, trying to look like I was just checking my phone, not like I was living in my car 5 days post-surgery. The police car passed without stopping. I cried then, quiet sobs that made my abdomen scream with pain. I cried for the life I'd had, for the dignity I'd lost, for the daughter-in-law who'd looked at me with such cold indifference. I cried for my son, who didn't know his mother was homeless. I cried for myself, for the 67-year-old woman with cancer and a bag attached to her stomach and nowhere to call home. Eventually, exhaustion overtook even the pain and fear. Slept. I woke to harsh morning sun streaming through the windshield, directly into my eyes. For a moment I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came crashing back. My body felt like it had been hit by a truck. My surgical site throbbed. My back ached from the awkward sleeping position. My mouth was dry as sandpaper. And the ostomy bag needed to be emptied. The nurse had shown me how to do this in the hospital. It had seemed simple enough in the clean, well-lit bathroom with all the supplies laid out neatly. But here, in a car in a grocery store parking lot, it seemed impossible. I looked around. The parking lot was mostly empty. It was barely 6 a.m. A few early workers were trickling in for the store's opening. I couldn't go inside. I was wearing sweatpants and a shirt I'd slept in. I probably smelled terrible and I could barely walk. The thought of shuffling through a grocery store, of people staring, of having to explain myself if anyone asked, it was too much. But I had to do something about the bag. I found a roll of paper towels in the back seat, something left over from a months ago road trip. I managed, with shaking hands and waves of nausea, to empty the bag into an empty fast food cup I found on the floor. It was degrading, disgusting, the antithesis of everything the nurse had explained about hygiene and proper care. But I did it. Afterward, I used hand sanitizer from my purse and tried not to think about infection, about complications, about all the ways this could go wrong. I needed to check my surgical site. The nurse had given me detailed instructions. Look for redness, swelling, drainage, signs of infection. But I couldn't do it here. Couldn't pull up my shirt in a parking lot where anyone might see. I drove to a different parking lot. Then another. Each time, paranoia that someone would notice me, would question why I was there, would call the police. I finally found a public park with restrooms. I shuffled inside, moving like an old woman, which I supposed I was. Every step hurt. My abdomen felt swollen, hot. In the dingy bathroom mirror, I barely recognized myself. My hair was matted with sweat. My face was pale and haggard. I'd aged 10 years in 5 days. I lifted my shirt and carefully peeled back the dressing. The incision looked angry, red and swollen. Was that normal? The nurse had said some redness was expected. But how much was normal versus how much was infection? I didn't know. I had no way of knowing. I did my best to clean around the site with paper towels and soap, then reapplied the dressing. My hands shook the entire time. When I emerged from the bathroom, an older man was standing by my car, looking at the trash bags visible through the windows. "You okay, miss?" he asked when he saw me. Fine, I said quickly. Just traveling. He looked skeptical but nodded and walked away. I got back in the car and drove. I needed to find somewhere less conspicuous, somewhere I could stay without attracting attention. I ended up in a residential neighborhood, parking on a quiet street lined with oak trees. It looked peaceful, normal. The kind of street where someone like me might belong. I reclined the seat again and tried to rest, but every few minutes a car would drive past and I'd tense, waiting for someone to knock on my window, to ask what I was doing there. Around noon my phone rang. Jessica. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to answer, to scream at her, to beg her to let me come back. Part of me wanted to throw the phone out the window. I let it ring. She didn't leave a voicemail. She called again an hour later. Again I didn't answer. Then David called. Mom. Jessica said she's been trying to reach you. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, I said, and I was getting better at the lie. I've just been sleeping. The medication makes me drowsy. That's good. You need to rest. Listen, Mom, I have more bad news. They're asking me to stay through Friday. I'm so sorry. But it'll just be 3 more days, and then I'll be home. Can you hang in there? Friday. 3 more days. 3 more nights in my car. Of course, I said. Take the time you need. Thanks, Mom. You're incredible. I don't know what I'd do without you. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Instead I said, I love you, David. Love you too. Tell Jessica I'll call her later. After we hung up I sat there staring at nothing. 3 more days. Could I survive 3 more days like this? Had to. What choice did I have? The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of pain, fear, and desperate survival. I moved my car every few hours to avoid suspicion. Parking lot to parking lot, street to street, always looking over my shoulder, always afraid. I ate crackers and granola bars from my emergency stash. I drank water from gas station bathrooms. I managed my medications on a schedule I tracked on my phone, because missing a dose felt like courting disaster. The ostomy bag became a source of constant anxiety. I was managing it barely, but not in the way I was supposed to. Not with proper hygiene, proper supplies. I was making do with paper towels and hand sanitizer and hope. My surgical site was definitely getting worse. The redness was spreading. Felt hot to the touch. There was a thin, clear drainage that worried me. I should go to urgent care. I knew that. But urgent care meant questions. Meant them seeing my situation. Meant possible hospital admission. Meant bills I couldn't pay. Meant David finding out what had happened. I couldn't face it. Not yet. Just 3 more days, I told myself. Once David is home, everything will be okay. I dozed during the days. Kept semi-alert at night. I learned which parking lots had security cameras, which ones didn't. I learned which public bathrooms were cleanest, which ones were likely to be empty. I saw other homeless people, real homeless people. I caught myself thinking, as if I wasn't one of them now. A man pushing a shopping cart full of belongings. A woman sleeping on a bench. We made eye contact once, and I saw recognition in her eyes. She knew what I was, what I'd become. On the 3rd night, Thursday night, I parked under a streetlight 3 blocks from David and Jessica's house. I don't know why I went back there. Maybe some part of me hoped Jessica would have a change of heart. Maybe I just needed to be close to somewhere that had once felt like home. I could see Emma's bedroom window from where I parked. The light was on. I imagined her doing homework or reading or texting with friends. Did she wonder where I was? Did she miss me? Or had Jessica's story, that I'd chosen to recover elsewhere, satisfied her curiosity? Around 10 p.m. the light went out. Bedtime for Emma. My chest ached with longing to hug her goodnight, to smooth her hair back from her forehead the way she used to let me when she was little. Tyler's light stayed on later. He was always a night owl. At 11 p.m. that too went dark. Then just the master bedroom light remained. I watched the shadows moving behind the curtains. Jessica and David's room. Except David wasn't there. Just Jessica, alone, probably sleeping peacefully in her comfortable bed while I sat in a car with a surgical wound that was definitely infected and no idea how I'd survive another day. The rage that washed over me was so intense it made me dizzy. How dare she? How dare she throw me out and then sleep peacefully? How dare she lie to my grandchildren? How dare she live in that house, the house I'd helped buy, while I suffered? I grabbed my phone, pulled up her number, and was about to call when headlights swept across my windshield. Car was pulling into the driveway. My heart stopped. David. He was home early. Full day early. I watched as he got out of the car, grabbed his luggage from the trunk, and headed for the front door. He looked tired, rumpled from travel. He went inside and I held my breath, waiting. Took less than 5 minutes. The front door burst open and David came running out. He looked up and down the street, frantic, his phone pressed to his ear. My phone rang. Mom, where are you? I've been home for 5 minutes and Jessica just told me. Mom, where are you? I'm here, I said softly. I'm right here, David. Where? 3 blocks down. Under the streetlight. I can see your house from here. What? Mom, stay there. Stay right there. I'm coming. He ran. My grown son ran down the street in the dark, his phone light bouncing until he reached my car. When he saw me, really saw me, hunched in the driver's seat, surrounded by trash bags, looking like death warmed over. His face crumpled. Oh my God, Mom. He wrenched open the door and dropped to his knees beside the car. What happened? Jessica said you decided to stay somewhere else, that you thought it would be easier, but this... He gestured at everything. This isn't, Mom. Have you been sleeping in your car? I nodded, unable to speak. Since when? Since you came home from the hospital. Another nod. That was 3 days ago. His voice broke. You've been living in your car for 3 days? Right after surgery. Jessica told me to leave. I finally managed. She said I wasn't family. She said I needed to go. David stood up abruptly, and I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Pure, undiluted fury. Come on, he said, his voice deadly calm. Let's get you home. David helped me out of the car with infinite gentleness, but I could feel the rage vibrating through him. He supported most of my weight as we walked slowly back to the house, stopping every few feet so I could catch my breath. Are you in pain? He asked. Yes. How bad? Pretty bad. And I think my incision might be infected. He made a sound that was almost a growl. We're taking you to the ER. But first, I need to deal with Jessica. When we reached the house, he helped me onto the couch, then grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around me like I was something precious and breakable. Maybe I was. Stay here, he said. Don't move. I'll be right back. He stormed upstairs and I heard the bedroom door slam open. David. You're home early. What did you do? His voice was loud enough that I could hear every word from downstairs. What the fuck did you do? David, lower your voice, you'll wake the kids. I don't care. Tell me what you did to my mother. I told her she needed to find somewhere else to recover. We talked about this. It was too much. You threw her out. You threw her out the day she came home from the hospital. She's been sleeping in her car, Jessica. 3 days after major surgery. She had options. I gave her a list of facilities. She had no money for facilities. You knew that. You knew she gave us $30,000 for this house. You knew she had nothing left. There was a pause. Then Jessica's voice quieter. She could have called you. She didn't want to burden me. Because that's who she is. She'd rather sleep in a car than make her son choose between his wife and his mother. But guess what, Jessica? You made me choose. And I'm choosing her. David. Pack a bag. You're leaving. Tonight. You can't be serious. Do I sound like I'm joking? You put my mother who just had cancer surgery, out on the street like garbage. You let her suffer for 3 days. You lied to me about it. You told me she was fine, that she'd chosen to stay somewhere else. You're a liar, Jessica. And right now, I can barely stand to look at you. I'm your wife. You stopped being a wife the moment you threw my dying mother out of her home. She's not dying. She has cancer. She had 50-50 odds of surviving that surgery. And instead of helping her, instead of showing even basic human decency, you threw her away. I heard Jessica crying now. I was overwhelmed. Panic. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was cruelty. This was calculated, cold-blooded cruelty. David, please. Pack a bag. You can stay at your mother's. We'll figure out the rest later. But right now, I need you out of this house while I take care of my mother. Footsteps on the stairs. Jessica came down, a small overnight bag in her hand, her face blotchy from crying. She looked at me huddled on the couch, and something flickered across her expression. Guilt? Remorse? Fear? Margaret, Don't, David said sharply. Don't say anything to her. Just go. Jessica left, and the house fell silent except for the sound of my ragged breathing. David knelt beside me. Mom, let me see your incision. With shaking hands, I lifted my shirt. His face went pale when he saw the redness, the swelling, the drainage. Jesus Christ. We're going to the hospital. Right now. David, I'm so tired. I know you are. But this is infected, Mom. You need 4 antibiotics. You need proper care. Please. Let me take care of you. I nodded, too exhausted to argue. He helped me to his car, moving slowly, supporting my weight. As we drove to the hospital, he kept one hand on the steering wheel and one hand holding mine. I'm so sorry, he kept saying. I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have known. I should have protected you. You didn't know, I said softly. I should have. I'm your son. It's my job to protect you. You were in Seattle. You had work. Nothing is more important than you. Nothing. I will never forgive myself for this. Never. At the emergency room, David carried me in, refusing to wait for a wheelchair. He held me while they checked me in, while nurses swarmed around asking questions, while a doctor examined my surgical site and confirmed what we already knew. Significant surgical site infection, the doctor said. We're going to admit you, start 4 antibiotics immediately. How long has it been like this? A few days, I admitted. And you didn't seek treatment. I didn't answer. What could I say? That I'd been homeless. That I'd been too afraid and too ashamed. David answered for me. She was in a difficult situation. She's here now. That's what matters. They admitted me, started the antibiotics, pumped me full of pain medication that finally took the edge off. David stayed by my bedside, holding my hand, occasionally crying quietly. I'm leaving her, he said at one point. Jessica. I'm filing for divorce. David, no. Yes. What she did is unforgivable, Mom. Absolutely unforgivable. Think about the kids. I am thinking about the kids. I'm thinking about what kind of person their mother is. I'm thinking about what kind of lesson it teaches them if I stay with someone capable of this. I was too tired to argue. Too tired to do anything but let the medication pull me under into blessed, painless sleep. I spent 4 days in the hospital while the antibiotics worked their magic. The infection cleared, the swelling reduced, and slowly, I started to feel human again. David never left. He slept in the chair beside my bed, ate cafeteria food, handled work calls from the hallway. He was there when I woke up and there when I fell asleep. Emma and Tyler visited on the second day. Emma cried when she saw me, and Tyler wouldn't let go of my hand. Grandma, we didn't know, Emma kept saying. We didn't know you were sick. Mom said you were fine. I am fine now, I assured them. See. Getting better every day. Are you coming home? Tyler asked. David answered before I could. Yes. Grandma is absolutely coming home. They brought me drawings, told me about school, sat on the bed and carefully avoided my 4 lines. Jessica didn't come. On the 3rd day, David updated me on the situation. Jessica is staying with her mother. She wants to talk. She says she wants to apologize, wants to explain. Do you want her to? Yes. I don't know what I want. I'm so angry, Mom. Every time I think about you in that car, suffering alone. His voice broke. How could she do that to you? Fear, I said quietly. Resentment. Jealousy, maybe. I don't know. But people do terrible things when they're overwhelmed. That's not an excuse. No. But maybe it's an explanation. He looked at me with something like wonder. How are you not more angry? Oh, I'm angry. But I'm also tired. And I don't want your marriage to end because of me. It wouldn't be because of you. It would be because she threw you out 3 days after cancer surgery. David, I want you to consider something. Can you forgive her? Really forgive her? Because if you can't, then yes, divorce is the only option. But if there's even a chance, for the kids, for your family, maybe it's worth exploring. He didn't answer. But I could see him thinking. I was discharged on day 5 with strict instructions. Complete the full course of oral antibiotics, keep the surgical site clean and dry, follow up with Dr. Chen in 1 week, and for God's sake, rest in a proper bed and let someone help you. David took me home, to his home, my home, whatever it was now. He'd moved my things into the upstairs guest room, the room I'd occupied before Jessica threw me out. This is your room, he said firmly. For as long as you want it. Forever if you want. You never have to leave. This is your home. I cried then. Great heaving sobs of relief and exhaustion and gratitude. David held me while I cried. And we didn't talk about Jessica or divorce or what came next. We just existed in that moment. Mother and son together, safe. Jessica came home a week later. David had been going to therapy, both individual and with Jessica. I'd encouraged him to go, to try to work through this before making any permanent decisions. She knocked on the door like a visitor in her own home. David let her in, and the 3 of us sat in the living room in the most awkward silence I'd ever experienced. Jessica looked terrible. She'd lost weight. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hands shook as she clutched a tissue. Margaret, she began, and her voice was hoarse. I need to tell you some things. The therapist helped me understand some things about myself, about why I did what I did. And I need you to hear them, even though they don't excuse what I did. Nothing excuses it. I nodded for her to continue. When David asked me if you could stay with us after your fall, I said yes because that's what you're supposed to say. But I wasn't happy about it. I felt like my space was being invaded. Like suddenly my home wasn't mine anymore. She twisted the tissue in her hands. And you were helpful. You really were. But that almost made it worse because then I felt guilty for resenting you. And the resentment built and built. Why didn't you talk to me? I asked quietly. We could have figured something out. Because I knew how it would sound. David's mother, who's been through so much, who's alone. How could I say I wanted her to leave? I'd be the villain. So I said nothing, and the resentment grew into something toxic. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. When you got diagnosed, I was terrified. Terrified of what it would mean, how much more you'd need. And I know how horrible that sounds. You had cancer, and I was worried about my convenience. It wasn't convenient, I said. I understand that. But you had just had surgery, Jessica said, her voice rising. You were vulnerable and in pain, and none of that mattered to me. All I could think was, I can't do this. I can't deal with this. And so I didn't. I just got rid of the problem. Got rid of you. She covered her face with her hands. The therapist says I have issues with feeling trapped, with needing control. My dad was controlling when I was a kid, and I've spent my adult life making sure no one can control me. And somehow, in my twisted logic, you staying with us felt like losing control of my own life. So you took control by throwing me out, I said. Yes. And it felt powerful in the moment. It felt like I was finally taking charge. But then I saw David's face when he found out. And I thought about you in that car, suffering. And I realized what I'd become. What I'd done. She dropped her hands and looked at me directly. I am so sorry. I know those words aren't enough. I know I can't undo what I did. But I am genuinely deeply sorry. And I'm getting help. Real help. To make sure I never treat anyone that way again. The room was silent for a long moment. Then David spoke. Mom, you don't have to forgive her. You don't owe her anything. This is entirely your decision. I looked at Jessica, really looked at her. I saw genuine remorse. I also saw the woman who'd cast me out at my most vulnerable. Both things were true. I forgive you, I said finally. Not because you deserve it, but because I need to let go of this anger. It's eating me alive. Jessica started crying harder. Thank you. Thank you. I don't deserve it. No, I interrupted. You don't. And I want you to understand something. I forgive you, but I don't forget. I will never forget what you're capable of when you feel threatened. That knowledge will always be between us. I understand. And if you ever treat anyone with that kind of cruelty again, I will make sure everyone knows what you did to me. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. I turned to David. I want you two to try. For the kids. For your family. Go to therapy. Work on this. See if you can rebuild trust. But David, I looked at my son seriously. If she ever shows that side of herself again, you leave. No second chances. No excuses. Agreed, David said. Jessica nodded frantically. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll prove I can be better. Then let's try, I said. But I'm moving out. What? Mom, no. David started. Yes. Not today, not tomorrow. Soon. Because Jessica was right about one thing. I do need my own space. My own home. And you two need to rebuild your marriage without me as a constant presence. Where will you go? David asked, concerned. I'll find an apartment. Something small, something I can manage. Somewhere I can have my dignity and my independence. Let me help, David said. Financially. Whatever you need. Smiled. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll let you help. But on my terms. Jessica spoke up quietly. Margaret, would you, before you move out, would you let me help you? With your recovery. Let me prove I can do better. I considered it. It would be uncomfortable. It would be awkward. But maybe it was necessary for all of us to move forward. All right, I said. But the moment it feels wrong, the moment I sense any resentment, I'm done. Understood. Understood. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for next part of the story. Thanks.